The truth must be the whole truth and not a partial truth, or it's not the truth at all. Hey everybody, welcome back to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo here. Reason for Truth. The truth comes first, reasons come last, but we're always in constantly learning, because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well. The setting I want to use for today's lesson is the book of Mark, chapter 5. Jesus left from healing the man from the legion of demons, and he crossed over again in the boat to the other side. The crowd gathered around him. He was beside the sea, verse 21, and Jesus walked. A throng, meaning a large, densely packed crowd of people flanked around him. That's called a throng. Jesus, as he was walking and speaking in verse 24, picking it up verse 5, verses 21 to 34, we find the story of the lady that suffered from internal bleeding for 12 years coming to Jesus to be healed of her internal bleeding. She had spent all her money over the doctors, but they could do nothing. Never healed her disease. Took her money, though. The mission of the faith and healing. That's the key here, the mission and faith of the healing. Let's look at that. The suffering lady, this poor lady, had nowhere to look up to but to God and his son, Jesus Christ, who came incarnate, came into town. Jesus was walking through town, and she said, man, just want to reach out, touch his garment, hoping to be healed. For she said, if I just even touch his garments, I'll be made well. That's called faith. And immediately she did that, flow of blood dried up. She felt her body really was healed. She knew it at that moment, verses 28 to 29. The truth. We could stop the lesson right here and simply marvel over the miracle of Jesus healing this lady without even speaking about about the blessing and what had happened here. But that's not the central point, I don't think, of today's lesson. We often bask in the stories of Jesus' biblical miracles. We get all excited, makes us feel good, and it should do those things. But we gloss over major things, which are the elements of speaking the truth and the whole truth. That's what she did. Once the lady had touched Jesus' garments, he knew the power had gone out from him, and that just somebody had been healed. He knew it was. Verse 30, the power left Jesus, and the lady was immediately healed. Immediately. The word immediately is used twice in this context. Both the woman and Jesus simultaneously knew what had happened. The woman had no idea that Jesus really had consciously healed her. It's not like who did that. He said that to teach her a lesson. He wanted to see if she's going to speak the truth. While she initially sought to disappear into the crowd, Jesus in turn, and that's why he asked the question. He wanted to see who she was going to step up. Who touched my clothes? You don't think as God he didn't know? Yeah, he knew who touched his cloak. He wanted to correct any mistaken notion that she may have had or upon her leaving. He wanted to make sure that she knew exactly that God had healed her. It was not any magical, clothing that he was wearing, but it was actually divine God, that he knew it. That gave the credit to God and not some magic, outfit he was wearing. Did Jesus have to try to figure out who touched his garment? I want to readdress that. Listen, no, he didn't. God is omniscient. He's infinite. He knows all things, and he is truth. So in order to teach those around him, that's why he wrote things in the way that he did, had them written in the Bible, and said the things he did. He directly tested this lady to see if she would speak the partial truth or the whole truth. She was plain out, flat out, just truthful with him. Jesus is not partial truth. He isn't partial truth, and he doesn't speak partial truth. He just speaks the truth, and he is the truth. He gets to the point. This is why Jesus asked for whoever touched him to step forward and speak. And what happened? And he looked around, see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. That's what the Bible says. The Bible uses the word the whole truth. And Jesus, said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. Verses 32 to 34. It would be sad if she had faith but then lied. That'd be pretty bad. This is the central point I want to make today, is that the truth must be the whole truth, or it's not the truth at all. There is a rare exception where it's allowed. Doesn't make it any less truth. I'm going to talk about that later, so you can just hang on and go, really? There's an exception? Not to it being truth or not truth, but there are times where not speaking the truth is a less weighty situation. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the bottom line is we need to demand the truth of others and of ourselves. make sure that we are in line with Jesus as opposed to doing our own thing. Verse 33, by the way, demonstrates Jesus' kind manner and tender. His words must have just eased this lady's. She must have just been like, oh my God, thank God for God, right? That she was healed in front of all those people, and he was very generous with her and very kind and loving. She was totally honest, and stepped forward. She did the right thing, and she told him the whole truth. Jesus knows the future, and it's all powerful. So the timing, including the time he took to heal this lady, it was perfect. Jesus addresses this lady in a very personal way, by the way. He calls her daughter, implying there's a special relationship that had started at that moment with them. She was now viewed as one of his children, and he said, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. That's pretty sweet. All of a sudden, she came in the relationship with the living God of the universe. Now, in application for you and I today, I want to turn to, I was reading an article, Sherry Yantes, SPHR, Certified Human Resource Executive, wrote on a LinkedIn article, April 8th, 2015, opening with a quote by James E. Faust, and it says this, when we tell little white lies, we become progressively colorblind. It's better to remain silent than to mislead. Again, James E. Faust. Now, this was quoted by, she goes back to write that it's true that everyone tells a little white lie or omits information once in a while. All of us do that, whether intentionally or non-intentionally. That being said, when you decide not to disclose all the information, coming from an HR executive, right? That when you're conveniently to forget to mention something, because it can cause an issue, tell yourself, not really, is that really lying? Well, I think it depends on how the question is framed. If we told the truth to everybody about everything, I think we'd have some greater problems. But in truth, we do need to speak the whole truth when we're asked, period. Hey, are you green? Yes, I'm green. Not that I'm kind of, what are the yellowish, bluish, This article, by the way, she ends in her entry saying that although a strictly technical sense, not disclosing information is not lying, it's just not being truthful either. I guess fully truthful. Next time you're faced with a decision whether to not disclose information or not, think twice. Better option is usually to be truthful and maintain your integrity. Now, I agree with her totally. I do think there are times where if you're asked a question, you don't need to give any more information that's necessary. A lot of times they don't want to know all that information, and that'll just cause you more harm because they'll just misinterpret something else you said. So let's be careful and balance that out. In closing, I want to point out that there are rare occasions when it's okay to lie. I wouldn't say it's okay, but let me explain. To some degree, when there's a rare time where, and this is a moral and ethical question, where in God's eyes, you have two bad choices. You pick the less of the evils. And the example I like to look at is during the Holocaust, Anne Frank, a Jewish girl, was being hidden in the wall by a German family in an effort to do what? Preserve her life from being murdered by the Nazis. When the Nazi soldiers came to their door, what'd they do? What would they? And I've talked to Christians. They said, well, you should tell them the truth. There's a Nazi girl here. You speak the truth. I would disagree with that. If you knew she was going to be slaughtered as an innocent person, you have two options. You turn her over to be murdered, or what you do is, you say she's not here. That's a tough ethical question. So when the Nazi soldiers come to the door and they ask, what did they say? They said, no, she's not here. In God's eyes, they told a lie, period. They lied. And that's a sin. But telling a lie is much less weighty than allowing an innocent little girl to be murdered at the hands of the Nazi soldiers. There are rare times and ethical bounds that bound us. And listen, neither is good. It's just the lesser of the evil. It's like if you heard read of an English guy who was going down a river with his kids, son and a daughter, both fell out, neither could swim. Well, he had them in the boat in the first place and without life jackets. I haven't figured that one out, but he had to make a rare decision. Who does he save? You can mull that one over too. There's ethical situations which are gray, and you have to make the better of the less situations. These stories and these situations are rare, but telling the whole truth, right? It's good, and that's the way it's supposed to be. In the end, Jesus himself makes clear that Satan himself is the father of lies, saying that when he lies, he speaks his native tongue, for he is a liar and the father of lies. John 8:44. When debating with the Jewish leaders, Jesus said to them, why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and has nothing to do with the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you did not believe in me. Which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell you truth, you do not believe me. Whoever is of God hears the words of God, and the reason why you do not hear them is because you are not from God. John 8:43-47. That's strong to speak to the Jewish leaders. In the 21st century, politicians, business people, husbands and wives, children, school teachers, pretty much most people at one time or another tell a lie, perhaps a little white lie. The truth is that the importance of telling the whole truth is what God expects without compromise, unless we're in the situations where they get those ethical situations where you have the lesser of two evils. They're very rare. Then you'll have to make that decision for your own. God only accepts our speaking the whole truth. Nothing but the truth is the legitimately telling the truth at all. If that sounds confusing, I hope it's not. So God's blessings to you. Make sure you do a couple things. Make sure you like, subscribe. If you're listening to audio, give us a 5-star bad there. Help us with the iTunes and get our reach greater. Also, before you leave, make sure you do one special thing. Join my community, StephenGarofalo.com. It's a closed community. You can join for free. Get a couple articles a week and other interactive small videos. And if you want to join subscriber level, you could do so for only $5 a month, and you'll get the Reason for Truth podcast 1 to 3 days early. So God's blessings to you. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.